Let me take this opportunity to thank the chairpersons and the N.K. Dabar Foundation for this very kind invite, Dr. Amita Maheshwari, Dr. Bowman Dabar. I'm going to discuss two papers, and it is really appropriate that I move on from my previous speaker. And the previous speaker ended on the differences between ovarian cancer and primary peritoneal cancers. And just to bring you into the picture, this is the concept that primary peritoneal cancers are similar to stage 3 and 4 ovarian cancers. But the question has always remained whether they are the underlying biology, the prognosis, and the optimal management, and the overall survival, whether they're similar or not. And this comes from an Australian population-based case control study. The comparison is between 120 primary peritoneal cancers. These are GOG pathologists based on the criteria that were outlined before, who diagnosed these primary peritoneal cancers, and 635 patients with primary ovarian cancers. They do a subset analysis wherein the advanced primary peritoneal cancers are compared to stage 3 and 4 serous ovarian cancers. And these are the clinical variables they have used. The stage of the disease according as set out by the FIGO, histological grades as in 1, 2, 3. Residual disease is no macroscopic disease is no residual disease, and residual disease, any macroscopic disease is residual disease irrespective of the size. And then the PFS and the OS are pretty standard. So what they have also done is they have also done a gene profiling wherein some of the PPCs, or the primary peritoneal cancers and the ovarian cancers, have been profiled into this C1 to C6, the 6 molecular subtypes. Now, we know the C1, C2, C4, and C5 are normally seen in the high-grade serous and the endometrioid type of cancers, while the C3 and C6 are seen in the low-grade and the low malignant potential tumors. And if you look at the survival, and this is again from another study, that the C1, those who express C1 have poor survival compared to those who express C5, C6 and C3. If that is the case, then if you then look at what they have seen, and they have looked at the clinical pathological characteristics of these two groups, the stage 3 and 4 and the primary peritoneal cancers, you will notice that they have actually seen that the primary peritoneal cancers were, the primary peritoneal cancers were subjected to more neoadjuvant chemotherapy because the surgeons at that time felt that they would not be able to obtain a complete cytoreduction. And also, the mean age in the primary peritoneal cancer group was slightly older to those of the serous ovarian cancer stage 3 and 4. Again, the complete surgical resection obtained after NACT plus interval debulking surgery in primary peritoneal cancer was similar to the ovarian cancers. So as you can see, if NACT was given and then IDS was attempted, the complete cytoreduction seemed to be better. However, if you now see the primary surgery followed by adjuvant chemotherapy, which is the top bit, you will find that primary surgery did not lead to complete cytoreduction in most of the primary peritoneal cancers. So it's 14.5 versus 23.2. And this is the other thing they have seen when they did a microarray gene expression. Most of the primary peritoneal cancers were of the type C1. So we know that C1 has a lower complete debulking rate. Median PFS in primary peritoneal cancer is lower, and the OS is also lower. Women with advanced serous primary peritoneal cancer had increased risk of disease progression and death. And when they put this to they first did an univariate analysis, and then they did a multivariate analysis. And this is an interesting finding that came out that neoadjuvant chemotherapy was more likely to lead to death and poor overall survival in those with primary peritoneal cancer, which confused everybody, because here we had the EORTC and the CHORUS trials saying something different. So they, in the discussion, the authors agree that this paper is not designed to look at neoadjuvant chemotherapy and the outcome associated with it, but nevertheless, both primary peritoneal and ovarian cancer patients treated with neoadjuvant chemotherapy in our study had a significantly poor survival, despite higher complete surgical debulk rates. And this is one of their conclusions, and it is at odds with the VERGOT and the CHORUS trial. Recent studies have suggested that neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by interval debulking may increase the risk of platinum resistance. And there are certain studies that actually look into this. And the biological features which preclude optimal cytoreduction may also be responsible for the chemotherapy resistance. Can I have the next one, please? Okay, so this is the second one. Now, the background to this is, of course, the fact that when we try and evaluate an adnexal mass, there's this age-old concept of whether we should be doing laparoscopy or whether we should be doing laparotomy. And this has been looked at over and over again. And what do we know about it? This is the assessment of an adnexal mass has already been done before using the ultrasound features of M-score and B-score, the CA125 features. Then we have got human epididymis protein, HE4, and we have used various algorithms like RMI, ROCA, and ROMA. I'm not going to go into the details of this, but here the group, this is the M rules and the B rules. What they did here was to try and see whether they could identify malignancy in adnexal masses by reading chromosomal instability, which is an important hallmark of cancer, utilizing the cell-free DNA from peripheral blood. So it is a very attractive concept wherein you take some blood and see in a patient with an adnexal mass whether you can predict whether you should be doing laparoscopy or laparotomy on these. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties of how you work out, but the concept is this, that you take the blood sample, you take the DNA, and you run it through NGS, and then you see whether there are chromosomal additions or chromosomal deletions. So if there are too many chromosomal additions and too many chromosomal deletions, that means that this is an unstable chromosome, and it is most likely to feature in an ovarian cancer patient. So don't need to worry about this too much. So that's the reason. Does this pointer work? It's quite interesting, so just let me take one moment. See, so all these, shall I use the mouse? I don't think it's, is there? Oh, okay, right. I want you to just concentrate on the right-hand side. Can you see that green panel there? Yeah? That green panel is normal, so it's benign. And then you have these are the healthy individuals, the green ones. These are the benign ones, the blue ones. The ochre ones are the borderline ones. And then you have got the invasive, non-high grade, which is the small little panel in red. Yeah? And then there is this brown panel, which is the invasive. So that is where the maximum there seems to be maximum deletions and additions. And therefore, there is a lot of noise there. And therefore, those are the cancerous adnexal masses as opposed to the ones in the benign and in the normal. Now, this is the concept, that if you have a lot of noise, that means these are cancerous. But there is a caveat to this, and I'm going to bring in those caveats for you to have a look at. So identifying chromosomal instability in cell-free DNA is the basic background of this study. Application at the level of primary diagnosis is being attempted rather than a prognostication. And tumors without chromosomal instability will therefore escape deletion. So if you think about it, what presents as an adnexal mass? Is it a type 2 disease or a type 1 disease? The type 2 disease will have enough clinical features for you to identify them without this. And therefore, I think this is my personal opinion that you really need to read into this study carefully. Type 2 tumors will have other associated features like ascites, large tumor volume. And if you're going to use this as a screen, then it has to be cost effective too. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Chowdhury.